Good day to all the participants and welcome to today's webinar on certification tools and standards for protected area management, which is hosted by the GSTC, IUCN-TAPAS Group and Botswana Tourism Organization. Our speakers today will be Jeremy Sampson, Ecosystem Program Communications Officer at IUCN, Mauro Randone, Regional Projects Manager at WWF Mediterranean, Thatayaone Mmapatsi, Senior Grading Assessor of Botswana Tourism Organization, and myself, Ariel, General Manager of GSTC. Before we get started, please note that you have on your side a panel with questions fields on the GoToWebinar panel. And you're welcome to post your questions anytime during the session. However, we will answer the questions at the end when we're having the Q&A session. So let's begin with Jeremy Sampson. Go ahead.
Thanks very much, Roy. So welcome to everyone. We're really glad to have you. This is, as Roy said, a joint webinar between several organizations, primarily hosted by the IUCN-TAPAS Group and GSTC. This is part of a webinar series that we offer through TAPAS. So I wanted to take a few minutes just to explain to you, those of you who don't know, what TAPAS is all about. So I'll be wearing my TAPAS hat for this short presentation, and then I'll come back later for the case study on the Mediterranean. But we're excited about this webinar, and in working together, to identify a topic, we thought what better subject than to think about the link between the GSTC destination criteria and protected areas, because we at TAPAS are focused on as a tourism and protected areas specialist group. Okay. So just a quick introduction to TAPAS. So this is our vision. We advocate for a future that enhances conservation, human well-being, and provides accessible educational and sustainable experiences. So the TAPAS group is one of several voluntary specialist groups, which is convened by IUCN, which is the International Union for Conservation of Nature. Underneath, the IUCN has several commissions, and this falls under the WCPA, which is the World Commission on Protected Areas. So we are a group of volunteers. There are over 500 official members of TAPAS, committed to promoting sustainable tourism across protected areas globally. And as you can imagine, the specialist group is made up of specialists committed to tourism and protected areas, or in areas of particular importance to biodiversity, which links back to the mission of IUCN. So what do we do at TAPAS? A couple of things. First of all, we produce and disseminate knowledge on tourism and protected areas through the IUCN and through our partners. So our publications have included journal special editions and technical reports, such as the best practices guidelines and guidance on tourism concessions and partnerships for protected areas. We also focus on capacity building through providing workshops and webinars, such as the one that we're doing right now. We've hosted webinars in the past on issues like visitor impacts and over-tourism and other topical issues related to tourism in protected areas. And we do networking among our members and more broadly to link and engage with the broader tourism sector. Sometimes we do this online. We have a Google group mailing list and some pretty active social media. And we also sometimes do events. For example, last year during the International Year of Sustainable Tourism, we co-organized an international conference on sustainable tourism in small island developing states in the Seychelles, and devised an entire stream focused on tourism and protected areas in SIDS. And lastly, just to share that the group is coordinated by a volunteer executive committee. You can see me down there as the communications person. We have several people committed to a 2-year to serve for 2 years on the executive committee, and in addition to holding roles helping to manage the, let's say, day-to-day operations of TAPAS, we also have several thematic working groups that are led by members of our executive committee. And if you're interested in more information or in joining TAPAS, we have lots of links, and we'll send this out afterwards. But you can always also email, contact one of us if you're, if you're interested in learning more. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Roy to introduce GSTC and the specifically the sustainable destination criteria.
Good. Okay. So a little bit of overview of what the GSTC is before we speak on how we'll have case studies from Botswana and from the Mediterranean on how the GSTC criteria is being used. In short, we can say that the GSTC, the Global Sustainable Tourism Council, is the leading global authority in setting and managing standards for sustainable travel and tourism. This comes especially by managing the GSTC criteria, which anyone here watching this webinar can later on access our website and download the criteria for free. You can use it. We have also many translations of the criteria to different languages, from Chinese and Japanese to Italian and Vietnamese. How did it come to be that we have the GSTC? Over the past few decades, we've had many schemes trying to help the customers, the consumers of tourism, to realize what products, what services are sustainable. And we've had many labels and many schemes of certification of eco hotels, green this, bio that, and other types of certifications, schemes, standards, and etc. that try to say what is sustainable tourism in the market. However, so many labels have created much confusion, and about 10 years ago, 2007, came specifically these organizations, the UNWTO, the World Tourism Organization, United Nations Environmental Program, Rainforest Alliance, and United Nations Foundation, together with the support of others in the tourism and travel industry, from the private industry, including also a number of governments. They decided that in order to create some kind of clear understanding and some order in this jungle that we've had of certifications, we should create one criteria that everyone can speak the same language when they discuss sustainability in travel and tourism. This is how the GSTC criteria came to be. It was developed over time based on existing standards and schemes, together with a very wide consultation period where we've had participation from all across the world, including, of course, professionals or anyone who is involved in tourism and wanted to participate in that. Just 1 second. Okay, I had something here on my screen. With the GSTC criteria, we have currently 2 sets of criteria. The first is criteria for industry, meaning that this is being used by hotels, by tour operators, or anyone which is a private, small entity. And the second one would be the destinations, where we look into a geographical zone that includes hotels, might include hotels, might include other attractions, and etc. If we go and we look in the GSTC criteria, they are divided into 4 pillars. Previously, there are many standards and standards and criteria that only refer to 3 parts of sustainability, but the GSTC criteria also has the part which refers to sustainability management. Of course, there is the social and economic benefit part, the cultural heritage, and the environment. In a more detailed way, Section 1, the first pillar, Section A, is to demonstrate sustainable destination management when we discuss the destination criteria. Pillar B, maximize the economic benefits to host community and minimize the negative impacts. And C would be maximize benefits to communities, visitors, and culture, and minimize the negative impacts. Section D, maximize benefits to the environment and minimize negative impacts. So you will see that an important part of the GSTC criteria are actionable items. We will not go very deep in this webinar on each criterion of the GSTC criteria. I'll just give a few examples, but later on you're welcome to go and look for yourself. Some of you, I've seen that some of the participants are already familiar with the GSTC criteria. So here's an example of the criterion in Section A, which refers to destination management organization. It also has indicators where we can see specific items that say, yes, this is a destination management organization, it exists, it should do this and that. Another example is the criterion B2 in Section B, local career opportunities. And its indicators. Section C, maximize benefits to communities. We have the part that talks about attraction protection. The destination has a policy and system to evaluate, rehabilitate, and conserve natural and cultural sites, including built heritage, historic and archaeological, and rural and urban scenic views. There is also a section that refers to tangible and intangible cultural parts and much more. So you will also see afterwards in some of the case studies in Botswana and in the Mediterranean, where some of the criterions are being put into practice. But we also need to understand that the GSTC criteria and generally standards have a role where they are being used for certifications. I believe that many of you are familiar with FSC, the Forest Stewardship Council, or MSC, the Marine Stewardship Council, or other types of certifications that tell us that this product, this service are this and that. This is fair trade, this is made of this, and sometimes quality insurance and etc. So let's quickly have a look. In the world of sustainability in travel and tourism, the certifications help us to verify the validity of claims and fighting false claims, known as greenwashing. I'm sure you are all familiar with this term. So how do we fight that? How we understand what is actually truly sustainable? We use certifications. It helps us to manage risk. It provides discipline for improvement, where we can understand to reach a level of certification, we need to do this and that. We have program, we have a plan on how to reach that stage. It also helps us in market access function. GSTC is working very hard with different governments and industry, large industry players to use certification as part of a market access where we increase the demand for businesses and destinations that have certifications of sustainability in travel and tourism. And from that, there is the GSTC Accreditation Program. The GSTC Accreditation Program is what we, the GSTC, do. We work with different certification bodies that are those that certifying the different businesses and organizations. So GSTC does not certify anything. We do not go to a hotel, we do not go to a destination and say, you are sustainable, you are certified. We work with the different accredited, GSTC accredited certification bodies, where they work with hotels, tour operators, other accommodations, and destinations. And besides using their own standards that are equivalent to the GSTC criteria, for GSTC accredited certification bodies, it means that we are actually, they have been accredited, meaning that we are looking into the process on how they certify the destination and how they certify the accommodation or the tour operator. And we say that process on how it is being certified is good, is of high quality and the best that there can be. It is not to say that other certification bodies do not certify in a good way, but it says that we did not check. For those that you see here, the GSTC can vouch and say, if you are looking for a status of certification, you should use these accredited certification bodies. And I like to end and say what we like to say at the GSTC, that sustainability is a journey. To reach a level of certification is not easy, it's a journey. And also when you reach a level of certification that your operation, your business, your tour operator, your hotel, they are certified and they are sustainable, you still have a road to walk in, you still need to improve, you still need to keep your good practices. Now, before we start with the case study from Botswana, I would like to invite all of you, all the participants here, and I've seen some of the participants' names that I know they are already registered and will attend our conference in Botswana. Once a year, we have our annual conference, and this year it will be hosted by GSTC and the Botswana Tourism Organization in Maun in Botswana this December. You can go to our website to register. And if you wonder, it is actually on the outskirts of the Okavango Delta, which you will hear about right now. And I will give the presentation now to Botswana Tourism Organization, to Thatayaone. Give me 1 minute, please. Thatayaone, can you share from your computer, or would you like us to continue to share from my screen?
Continue from your screen. How are you, Roy?
Okay, I'm doing great. Good
Yes.
to hear you, and see you in a few months in Botswana.
Oh, yes, we are waiting to welcome you all. We are busy arranging for the big conference.
Okay. And can I also send a request for your webcam?
Yes, please. Okay.
Good, we can see you.
Hi. You can see me?
Yes.
Okay, how is everyone? All right, I'll continue to do this presentation on behalf of Richard. Unfortunately, he got up. He was supposed to be taking you through the whole process, but we were having some strategy meeting that is taking long. Anyway, I will continue with the presentation. We will be hosting the GSTC 2018, and it's scheduled for Maung, December this year, of which we are hoping everyone will be attending. And Maung it's just on the outskirts of the Okavango Delta, which is a pristine area in Botswana. Like Roy mentioned earlier on, we do use the criterions for the GSTC. We have our own standards, which we call Botswana Eco Certification Standards. We have been using them to certify our accommodation facilities and so forth.
Apologies for this small technical issue.
Yeah. Okay, right. I think I see something.
Yes,
Just a
it
moment.
works.
Okay, I think it went to the furthest slides. Which slide is this one? It went.
I think you can click and it will go to the next slide.
Yeah, I'm clicking on it, but okay. Right, it's showing the one that is showing us the map of Botswana. The location of the Okavango Delta, as you can see, is the blue little thing there, and Maung will be. Can you see the mouse where I'm pointing? Are you able to see where I'm pointing?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
That's the Okavango there. That's blue thing, and all the waters are coming from Angola through Namibia to Botswana, and this is where the Okavango Delta is, which is one of the most pristine area in our country. So it's the largest inland delta, which is in Botswana, or you can say in Southern Africa. Like I was mentioning, that the water flows all the way from the Angola through Namibia to Botswana. Okay, the picture there is showing also the delta, but it's taking a bit long to move. I don't know why. So this is also was showing how the water is flowing, the picture. All right. Like we're saying, the Okavango is situated in the Okavango Delta. It's a Ramsar size. It shows also the how big it is. It's 55,374 square kilometers, which is an area of a permanent swamp that is covering more than 6,000 square kilometers. The population, it's around about 152,000 plus. That also spread over a vast area of 68,000 square kilometers. I keep on clicking, but it's taking long to move to the next slides.
I can also move.
Oh, you can also move.
Yes.
Then can you do it on that side, maybe? Move to the next one.
Yeah.
All right. There's also a few natural places in the world that offer so many goods and assets, like the Okavango Delta. The flooded grassland form a critical habitat of many species, and also there is also 9 controlled hunting area zones that is mostly community based. The area is divided into 1 game reserve and several wildlife management areas or controlled hunting areas. All commercial and most community areas are managed under the resource use leases, which is given by the land authority. And most of the core zone has been declared a stock-free zone under the Disease of Animals Act of 1977, because you also have a cattle versus wildlife. Okay, let's move to the next one. Are you able to move?
Yeah.
Okay, you're still on that one. Right. Then there's the Moremi Game Reserve, which was proclaimed in 1964 and reclaimed again. Just a bit back, a bit.
For the Moremi Game Reserve?
Yes, the one on the Moremi Game Reserve. Yes, this one. The reserve is managed in terms of the Moremi Game Reserve Management Plan. This is also, there are also National Parks Act of 1992, which is also used under the wildlife utilization. There is also appropriate land use and management plans that have been prepared for these areas, and land use is regulated and zoned for specific uses by both the Land Authority and Department of Wildlife and National Parks. Right, next. Okay, next one. Okay. The Okavango Delta is also managed according to several government plans, that is including the Okavango Delta Management Plan, which has the Ngamiland integrated. It was a plan that came on to promote the Okavango Delta in terms of the carrying capacity, which was also used by the government in terms of if you get to be allocated land and use, then you know what's your carrying capacity in the area. And this was also done in a way that we don't over the delta shouldn't be having more of the operations that in the end they will deplete the resources. The current strength at the moment of the Okavango Delta is the promotion and marketing of ecotourism and the sustainable through participation of international sustainable tourism awards. So in an effort to keep abreast with the international standards, recognition and accreditation of Botswana eco-certification systems and further promotion of Botswana eco-certified facilities. So Botswana tourism participates globally in the global initiatives for international recognized. As we go along, you will see some of the awards that the Okavango Delta got through this participation. Let's move to the next one.
Oh. This one?
Yeah, here. No, another one. This one, it says promotion. Okay. Botswana Tourism, on its sitting of the 1st of August 2018, adopted the recommendation of the Quality Services Committee for accreditation of the Botswana Eco Tourism Certification System by the GSTC Council to adopt the GSTC industry criteria of hotels and tour operators and GSTC criteria for destinations. So here we are aligning our own standards to the GSTC to achieve more goals when we are aligned to the GSTC. So the accreditation of the Botswana Eco Certification Standards by GSTC and adoption of the GSTC criteria for industry will help us as Botswana to position ourselves and compete globally. Okay, we can move to the next one. Okay, move to the next one. Can I move to the next one, Roy? Okay. The GSTC as a global initiative is dedicated. Yeah, you see the current strength that also we got. It keeps on moving back and forth there. Roy, can we move to the next one? Okay. So one of the the strengths that made us to also get some recognition. We were winner of the Condé Nast Traveler in 2013, and then it's mixing my presentations. Pick this side. Can you move to the next one? Right. There's also the Rhino Reintroduction Project that has won in the 2014 award for Best Field Ranger. This was announced at the 3rd Annual Rhino Conservation in Johannesburg, but our former president, excuse me, when it says His Excellency the President, this is the former now president, Lieutenant General Thatayaone was also recognized for his pivotal role and far-reaching role in Botswana's rhino conservation success, winning the category political and judiciary support. What the government was doing here in Botswana was that we do have an area where we conserve much of our rhinos and are very, very protected 24 hours. And the previous government, through the former president, Lieutenant General Thatayaone, took the initiatives that they will also relocate around 100 rhinos from South Africa to Botswana, because South Africa was facing lots of poaching of rhinos, and this was working very well in Botswana. That in Botswana they are protected 24 hours. Okay, next one. Can I have a next one? Okay. Botswana's is increasingly important role. There was, can we go back one step? Okay. It has gone very far. So this one is the Transfrontier Conservation Area of the Okavango Zambezi. Now this one, it has increased to more countries, which included Botswana, Angola, Namibia, Zimbabwe, and Zambia. So the Kaza area, the one that was shown on here on the map, it's called Okavango Zambezi Transfrontier Conservation Area. You can see how big also it is, around 520,000 square kilometers. Altogether, because it's got more countries, it's got 20 national parks, 85 forest reserves, 22 conservancies, 11 sanctuaries, 103 community-based. And this is an area where we said we can use it also. Botswana can be used to learn from it when we are using the GSTC criteria, so that other countries like Zambia, Zimbabwe, Angola, Namibia, they can come in, and then we have certified accommodation facilities or certified lodges that when we use the GSTC criteria, and they can be marketed under one area as the Okavango Zambezi Transfrontier Conservation. And you can see when you look at the population, it's for those 5 countries there, it's 2.6 million for that area only that is covered under the Okavango Zambezi Transfrontier Conservation Area. Next. Right. But this one is just to show you only the tourism background of the Transfrontier, the one that I just talked about, because it was established as a Transfrontier conservation tourism destination in Okavango and Zambezi River basin. That's, like I mentioned, Angola, Botswana, Namibia, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. Their mission is also to sustainably manage the the ecosystem, its heritage and cultural resources based on best conservation and tourism models for the socio-economic well-being of the communities that live along the basin and other stakeholders in and around the ecoregion. So the objective is to facilitate tourism across the international borders. So that's why I mentioned that they can use us also as Botswana to learn from the GSTC criteria that we are using, and then we can also make sure that the whole region complies to that going forward. All right, next. Okay. All right, so this one is only the key tourism destination and models, the branding and marketing of the awards. We also have Eco Awards that is in Namibia. Botswana is using the Eco Tourism certification. Zimbabwe is Green Tourism certification, while Zambia is still ongoing. You can see from the 5 countries that already 3 have other branding and marketing that they have in place. So in the future, when we go on, it will be very wise when all of these countries have aligned to the GSTC criteria, and it will be beneficial and be promoted globally. Next. Okay, this map now shows you the elephant migration routes in the Southern Africa. As you can see, the countries that follow under the Okavango Zambezi Transfrontier, Angola, Namibia, Botswana, the red lines there, that's the route where elephant crosses. Because they move freely between all these countries, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Namibia, and Angola. So we have allowed that all these elephants can just move freely because elephants travel longer distances. Next. The largest elephant census in sub-Saharan Africa. This is just a map that's showing of the elephants. Like I mentioned earlier on the rhinos there, it shows the safe haven in Botswana for those rhinos. But this one is only showing the elephants, as to say the census that was covering about 8,500 square miles. Or 22,000 square kilometers, and showed that was the largest area where you can find elephants. So this is one of the projects that we were doing, the country's doing, conservation effort through reintroduction of the endangered rhinos, because we are transporting them to safer areas, and then they are monitored because we have to know where they are on a daily basis to keep them from being poached. Okay, next. Okay, let's move to another one. That's one of the conservation introductions. Right, minimizing environmental impact. That's the design of sustainable tourism operations. As you can see, these are some of the facilities that are built in the Delta, which is a pristine area. And these are other methods that they use, effective environmental management system that they have in place. So as you come to the conference in December, some of you will get to travel and see these other facilities. They are built on temporary structures that, if in terms that you get to leave after maybe 15 years, 20 years, then you leave the area as it was. Next one. Right, those are some of the structures that are built there. And then these are also mode of transport, low impact, sustainable tourism. And then also these are community benefits, some of the projects that you get to see when tourists visit the area. They get to be transported also in those canoes. And these are the locals community projects whereby an operator will offer a space for them to do their baskets and then sells them on their behalf to the tourists. And these are very popular. You can see when you look into our eco certification, you will find that the logo that we used is a basket, which is a popular product in Botswana. And these are the baskets that are being done by the communities. Next. Next one. Right, so these are some of the Global Tourism Awards that the Delta got to be recognized with. 2017, we were top of one of the hundreds, and then 2018 in ITB Berlin, as well as the Sustainable Destination in 28, which was both Makgadikgadi, Chobe, and the Okavango Delta Ramsar site. You get to know more also with the Delta Ramsar site because it's the Okavango is under the Delta Ramsar site, including both Makgadikgadi and Chobe. Chobe, that's where Kasani is, where the conference was scheduled to be from the beginning, but then moved to Mauro. And then we were the finalist in 2017 for the Tourism for Tomorrow, but we ended up winning it as well. Sorry for this 2 slides, which are the same. The Delta also ended up being in the finalist, and then we won Tourism for Tomorrow. Okay. Next one. So this one shows that the Delta was the winner for the Tourism of the World. All right, thank you very much. Roy, can I then go back to you?
Yes, thank you very much, Thatayaone. And
yeah, I'm sorry for that inconvenience of the slides. They kept on taking long to show.
That is okay. And Jeremy and Mauro. Jeremy, I will make you now a presenter.
Okay, great. Show my screen. Let me know when you can see it.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much to our friends from Botswana. That was really interesting and very nice to see the destination criteria being applied by one of the early adopters. So we have a little bit of a different case study in the Mediterranean, where we are actually right now still on our journey, let's say, of applying the GSTC destination and industry criteria to protected areas across the region. So we're going to tell you a little bit about the work that we've been engaged in for the last several years, and also link it a bit to the process of developing a standard for Mediterranean protected areas and how we're utilizing the GSTC criteria to help us along that journey. So first of all, I'm just going to introduce you to our initiative, which is called MEET. MEET stands for the Mediterranean Experience of Ecotourism. And this is a network that we actually launched. It's a nonprofit association that we launched earlier this year after several years of working on European Union funded projects, which we'll tell you all about during this presentation. And the focus of this network is on supporting Mediterranean protected areas to develop, manage, and promote high-quality ecotourism products that directly benefit conservation. And Mauro and I are going to tell you a little bit about MEET and the application of the criteria within our network. So first of all, what do we do in MEET? So MEET is a network designed to support protected areas across the Mediterranean region, Southern Europe, and North Africa, with, as I said, developing and managing and promoting ecotourism products to the market. So we support protected areas in developing and making functional their local governance mechanisms between public and private sector, designing ecotourism products under a common, let's say a common vision. We support protected areas to actually design products that are, again, high quality conservation focused ecotourism products that put the protected area squarely in the center. We help protected areas to have the tools that are needed to measure and manage the quality, the sustainability, and the impact of the products that they have developed, and ultimately, of course, to monitor and improve their performance. And we have a market access mechanism. So through the MEET network and our commercial partner, we are actually promoting the products that meet the, let's say, a certain high quality threshold on our against our standards of quality and sustainability to the international market under a common umbrella brand, which is called MEET. So a little bit about why we exist. So, IUCN and WWF, who Mauro is here representing, are conservation organizations, and this is why we are involved in ecotourism development work, because the Mediterranean is a significant biodiversity hotspot, and we believe that protected areas are critical to supporting conservation of biodiversity. And we also believe that ecotourism can really be a positive driver of change within protected areas and have a positive impact on protected areas and their surrounding communities. But that tourism development has to be really well managed, and that's a big aspect of what we've been focused on for the last several years, is setting up the, let's say, the enabling conditions for tourism to be well managed in protected areas. Within the Mediterranean, the Mediterranean is a mass tourism destination. Most people come here for sun, sand, and sea, and of course the Mediterranean is in the news all the time for over-tourism, conflicts with residents, overuse of resources. We don't envisage that going away all of a sudden, but we believe that protected area ecotourism can really provide a significant, let's say, alternative method of tourism, and as we focused on developing actual alternative products that can shift some of the visitor flow away from the mass tourism sector and help protected areas to again manage those impacts much more carefully. And there is a great policy interest from the EU level in creating a more sustainable tourism sector. We're seeing quite a lot of funding from EU cooperation programs and an interest from policymakers in addressing the issues that are facing the EU and particularly the Mediterranean. So with all of that context in mind, we set out to start to work with protected areas, but of course we know that protected areas are facing several challenges, and aren't able to just say turn the switch on and off in terms of managing, having sort of the capacity and the relationships that they need to manage tourism successfully. Why? Again, the Mediterranean is a mass tourism destination, so there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure already existing in most of the protected areas that we're working with, who don't know how to say deal with the influx of visitors and don't have products to already existing to shift them away from a mass tourism product. Most protected areas lack the resources, the capacity. Many of them don't have the training that's needed to handle tourism development, and particularly to work closely with private sector to design and manage products. Everyone is, of course, working in silos. There's a lot of fragmentation. Public authorities are not always talking to private sector partners. That happens both at local scale and at regional scale. In the past, when protected areas have attempted to reach the market, they've often suffered from, let's say, a challenge in trying to reach the market on their own. So whether it's a matter of resources or of actually developing something that has the quality and, let's say, sustainability really solidly in place in order to meet international market expectations. And although there are, several, let's say, already tools and frameworks in place for monitoring and measuring quality and sustainability, what we found was, regarding Mediterranean protected area particularities, and specifically the idea of measuring and managing the quality of products, we found that there wasn't exactly the exact tool that was needed for that management effort to be successful. And so, as you'll see, we set about creating our own, let's say, standard and monitoring tool that would address the specific needs of our protected areas. And that's something that we've, of course, used the GSTC criteria for. So with all that challenge in mind and a clear opportunity and interest, let's say, from the EU region and supporting sustainable tourism initiatives, we've been able to implement two large-scale regional projects. The first one, called MEET, from 2014 to 2016, which took place in 25 protected areas across 8 countries, and now a project called Destimed, which is actually still underway, and IUCN and WWF are among working with some other partners in the region, are helping to manage and implement this project across 13 protected areas in 6 countries. So what have we done in these projects? Well, in order to get to the point where we were able to launch MEET as a regional ecotourism network, we spent the last several years developing the tools and methodologies that we felt the protected areas in the Med needed to have to manage and design high quality ecotourism products. So we adapted and created our own, as I said, standard and monitoring platform, which Mauro will tell you all about. We helped protected areas. We've now helped them design more than 40 different ecotourism products according to, let's say, quality guidelines and expectations of the market. We helped each of our parks design a formal local ecotourism cluster where they have a formal agreement in place with at least a tour operator, but typically other suppliers in the region as well, to come together and manage tourism in the destination. I mean, utilizing the principles of destination management to design collectively products and manage the performance of those products along the quality and sustainability indicators that we have selected. And all this led to the creation of the MEET network, which in a way is serving as a, let's say, a regional destination management organization responsible for developing product, advocating for policy, marketing the region as a whole, building the capacity of stakeholders, and ultimately, creating and shifting the brand of the Mediterranean region and the international market so that ecotourism becomes a viable alternative. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mauro, who will explain to you a bit about in a bit more detail about the standard and the linkages with the GSTC criteria.
Okay, I think you can hear me. You should be able to see me in a minute. Okay, first of all, thank you, Jeremy. Thanks the GSTC and IUCN-TAPAS group for inviting WWF for inviting us today. I will describe a little bit more about the standard that we developed within Destimed. So first thing, I think it's important to talk about the idea behind it. So the idea of building a standard for ecotourism in protected areas in the Mediterranean, which is essentially to support the local ecotourism cluster in different ways. So one example is managing the performance of their product, and then selecting the right suppliers and adopting the best practices, for instance. Also, the other key point was the alignment with the meat brand, so to ensure that the product quality was high and to be and that basically it's ready to be sold on the market. And finally, but also very importantly, to be able to demonstrate that there's actually a positive contribution of tourism towards the local community and businesses. Next slide, Jeremy. So just to essentially summarize the pillars of the standard, that essentially in short, therefore, and the first one is the enabling conditions. So we are talking about, for instance, the creation of a local ecotourism cluster and the alignment with the meat brand. The second pillar is about sustainability and the impact of the product. So we're talking about socioeconomic, cultural, and environmental aspects of the tour package. The third pillar is the quality of the guest experience, which is super important because we want to be ready for the market. And therefore, we include things like quality of transportation and various activities that are included in the package. And we measure that by, it's rated by the customer feedback. Finally, the fourth pillar is it's about the supply chain management. So the issues of local ownership, compliance, and fair employment within the package. Now, the local ecotourism clusters have available for them this monitoring platform in which they input data and achieve a score for each of these components. So they know how they're performing, essentially. Next, yeah, that's it. The continuous improvement slide. Essentially here, the key point of the standard is, and the central component is the idea of continuous improvement. So we aim to create a sort of virtuous model in which the assessment helps the LEC, the local ecotourism cluster, to identify potential improvements and constantly improve the package. So without this monitoring tool, this would be essentially impossible. Of course, this is a big effort for the local ecotourism cluster in the sense that there's a lot of data to be gathered. But as you will see, and as I will explain in the next slides, we try to develop it in such a way that even the small Mediterranean PAs with little resources, working together with the local tour operators with limited resources as well, they would have easy sort of indicators and criteria to work on, so that just make it feasible, you know, for them. And obviously, this represents the main, in my opinion, added value for the product that we are selling. I think in the market there's nothing like this out there. So the next slide, Jeremy. So a fundamental component here is also the ecological footprint calculation. Maybe not everyone is so familiar with the concept, but we're talking about a way of measuring the environmental impact of a person or a community, and it's expressed as the amount of land required to sort of sustain their use of natural resources. So it's a methodology that the Global Footprint Network has made and adapted to different kind of projects and targets globally. It's globally recognized, and in our case, it has been tailored to our specific project needs, which are different from the other applications of the methodology. So it was a bit of a pioneering exercise as well. So for each of the packages, we're measuring the ecological footprint. We measure the impacts of tourism on the resources and on the protected area of the resources of the community. Most importantly, the ecological footprint is a way of providing quantifiable data and specific recommendations for the improvement of the package. So they know how they're performing, and they also know basically in which areas they need to improve, whether it's transportation or food or, for example, accommodation. So where there are areas in which they have a very high impact and a very high ecological footprint, there will be suggestions to essentially improve. Next slide. Okay, I think it's getting there. Now, what is the link with GSTC? So WWF has endorsed the GSTC as the leading organization to establish and manage global sustainability standards in tourism. It's very important for us as project partners to make sure that our standards were aligned with GSTC criteria. Now, the first step we did in building the standard was to look at a series of global criteria and indicators that could be relevant for the project, not including exclusively GSTC, and then essentially the criteria have been narrowed down based on the specificities of the project and on the possibility to have a kind of easy monitoring process for the LEC. And this is where, after narrowing down this set of criteria, this is where we checked for the alignment with GSTC. First of all, we found that most of the criteria we selected were actually aligned, which was obviously great news. Actually, for most of the selected indicators, further verification mechanisms have been added. So basically, we went beyond the indicators asked by GSTC, including other specific indicators that would suit our need. Next slide, Jeremy. So the main focus for within the estimate, within the framework of the estimate, was on the GSTC industry criteria, as they represent a more kind of appropriate scale for the estimate projects, which essentially we're looking at products. So, however, we do believe that the tour packages of the project, which are managed by the local cluster and the protected areas, include essentially aspects that could be further represented by the destination level criteria. So we found that both are actually relevant. But we had to sort of pick and choose from each. And as you will see in the following slide, now obviously we are here we are summarizing. Jeremy, you can switch slide. We are summarizing a massive study that we did with each GSTC criteria assessed, and essentially it's just an example of what our choice of criteria and indicators, how do they relate with the specific code of the relative GSTC industry standard. Now, this is important also because we essentially encourage the private sector as well to meet the industry criteria in this process. So we kind of push it forward even more. As I said, it's a complex. It was a complex work. This was a brief introduction. This study in particular, I would like to mention, has been carried out in partnership with the Center of Advanced Studies for Tourism of the University of Bologna. Yeah, more information is available upon request. I will leave. I think we're going very long. I think this is the last slide, and then I'll let Jeremy close with the final ones.
Thanks, Mauro. So before we close, we wanted to just share some lessons learned from our process that we thought would be useful for the audience on the webinar who are perhaps thinking about application of criteria, GSTC criteria, or developing standards. These are just some things we've learned along the way. The first thing I want to point out actually is something that Mauro just said, which is that we are focused on products within a destination, and this actually made our analysis a bit tricky in some way, because we we had, as he said, we had to look at the destination criteria as well as the industry criteria, since we are what we've actually structured is a destination management organization, essentially, which is a protected area that is working really closely hand in hand with their supply chain under a formal agreement, under formal cooperation mechanism. So there is no specific product standard from GSTC, but we really were able to pick and choose from both the destination and industry criteria. And also what we found was having a product, working at the product level within a destination was an incredible incentive. I mean, it seems obvious perhaps, but incredible incentive for private sector to really participate and be at the table providing data, reporting on their practices transparently, and participating in a destination management, let's say, mechanism, which I've not really found to be typical. It is critical that destinations have this sort of participatory planning approach, and what we're seeing here is that a product that has a clear sort of path to market and economic incentive has really changed the relationship between public and private sector and has brought them together in a really sort of motivating and incentivized manner. So those were, those were big lessons learned for us, and we're really seeing that the product piece has, now that the framework is there and the destination managers are in the driver's seat, but collaborating very closely with private sector, they're starting to now solve other destination issues that are perhaps affecting the potential success of the product. So I know some of them are thinking about waste and other issues that the product, let's say the suppliers that are delivering the product may run into as part of the destination, and it's creating an organic process for these issues to be solved, which I'm really glad to see. This sort of shared responsibility for the long-term viability of destinations. My last point I'll make is just that we are this is a process, creating a standard and let's say picking the criteria and indicators. It's been a several-year process, and we're still in the middle of it. And rather than being paralyzed completely by trying to make it perfect, what we've done was tried to really make our criteria selection and our monitoring process very practical, and then identify which gaps would be really necessary to help it evolve toward being as effective as possible and to align with, let's say, global expectations for standards. So this has been a work in progress, and we've really found that just getting the ball rolling and creating something allowed us to do this testing and make sure that we had real uptake from our stakeholders that are on the ground managing destinations. So just the last thing I want to say, just to kind of close out the GSTC link, is where we go from here. I said this is a work in progress, and we still feel we have some work to do to really strengthen, particularly the socioeconomic criteria. Mauro told you about the ecological footprint, and we'd like to work towards something just as innovative on, let's say, measuring the socioeconomic footprint of tourism, both on the positive and negative side, in order to equip protected areas with making good management decisions. And we want to continue to build these tools to give the destination managers, through the destination criteria and other and other methods, ways that they can really continue to be in the driver's seat and affect change at the destination level. And lastly, I know this is important to GSTC, and it's important to our partners at WWF and to us as we evolve, that we work towards formal global recognition. And really, we're interested to see where it goes, because, as I said, there is no exact product standard within a destination, so it's a bit of an innovative approach, and how we work toward that exact alignment is a sort of an ongoing question, but something we're really interested and willing to explore. And that is all for us. So if you have any interest, further interest in what we're doing, or would like to talk more about it, there's our contact information. We'd be really happy to further the conversation offline. And Roy, back to you.
Thank you very much, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeremy and Mauro. And we will now start the Q&A session. So we have already a number of questions. For the attendees, if you would like to post a question, please write it down in the question section, and we will answer them. Jeremy and Mauro, can you see the questions? The same question. Thatayaone, can you see it? I will choose each question and we'll read it out loud.
I don't think we can see them. So.
Okay. So.
Yeah.
This is a question to Thatayaone from Lisa Scriven. For BTO, you mentioned selling baskets as a way that communities are benefiting. Do you have any examples of supply chain work involving the provisions of goods or services for ongoing operation needs, consumable etc. that are being filled by local communities?
All right, can I answer?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. With the baskets is that we have advised as the BTO, because it's not BTO who's doing the basketing and selling of them. We have encouraged the operators on the ground that they work with the communities that are closer to them in any way they can. And one of the things that I mentioned was the baskets, saying because the Delta is mostly in an area where baskets are made out of palm trees, and the operators then what they do is the communities that live adjacent to them, they manufacture those baskets, they weave the baskets, and then the operator will then sell those baskets on behalf of the communities. But other operators, they operate far from communities that are adjacent to them. And then they also encourage some of their staff members to produce those baskets and sell on the curio shops where those operations are. For example, there was a slide that I showed earlier on where people were sitting, women were sitting in one area next to the baskets that they had completed. And it benefits them as staff or communities in terms of the revenues that the tourist that comes in, they then buy the local produce of those baskets. One other initiative under Botswana Tourism will be to see that going forward, if our communities that group themselves together, they can have one area where they then produce the baskets, and then tourists go to visit them where they produce those baskets, and the tourists also can learn how the baskets are being made. you can have a lesson of maybe an hour or two with the communities, so that they teach you how to produce one of those baskets. And maybe then they can buy from them, or if they can make a small baskets and then they take them as a souvenir from them. That's one of the initiatives, because you then impact the tourist who's visiting to see the wildlife, and then also get to learn also the culture of the people of Botswana. So BTO, what it does is it's encouraging under our standards that operators should have an area where it sells local produce, such as baskets, or then can work with the communities adjacent to them in producing other products that they can sell to earn some living. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to the next question. This is just a technical question by Livigmuto Randone. Yes, after the webinar is over, tomorrow we will send you a link to also the recording of the webinar, as well as the file of the slides, so you can use it. And also we will send you some links. Next question by Kelly Bricker. Do you find the criteria help? Let's see, that would be for both Thatayaone and Jeremy and Mauro. Do you find the criteria, the GSTC criteria, help support PA management plans, supplementing or strengthening, or do they operate separate from PA management plans, perhaps parallel to, either in Botswana or Mediterranean? Thank you.
Okay. Should I go on?
Go. You want to go first? Yeah, sure.
All right. What we have found as Botswana Tourism is that when we align our standards, the Botswana Eco Certification standards, to the GSTC, it has worked for us, and it has improved very, very well in terms of, because when you look at the Botswana standards, we had quite a lot of them, and some of them were not even applicable to the operations of the areas that we are covering. For example, the standards that we had developed were more specific only to lodges in the Delta, and not applicable to urban areas. So when we looked at the GSTC, and then we said we want to align ours to the GSTC criteria, we found it suitable for us that we can even work very faster with those, and then being specific to what is it that we need the industry to address, and work together with the communities, especially when you are using protected areas and so forth, with the carrying capacities. How do you involve communities that live around those areas? So Botswana Tourism found the criteria very important and useful, and it's working very well as we have been aligning. And it was easier for us to pick the few that we from the list that we had, and align to the GSTC criteria. And it will be even easier for the operators to do on their own. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. From the Mediterranean perspective, I guess what I can share is that, you know, as I mentioned during the presentation, we are starting from, let's say, the product perspective. So the standard that we developed and the application of criteria, in many cases, there is very little destination management happening. There are sometimes management plans in place, not always, but what we're finding is that it is creating new good behaviors, and in some cases incentivizing, let's say, more desire to implement or even develop better management plans. But on the other side, I should say that those who do have good management plans in place with let's say with good practices that already align with GSTC criteria or with the European Charter for Sustainable Tourism, which is which several, many parks have already gone through here, are much better, let's say, set up to implement this local ecotourism cluster and to go into the process of developing and managing their products at destination level. And those who don't have good management plans in place or who have not gone through the European Charter typically are spending the first couple of years just learning how to work together with private sector and creating those enabling conditions, let's say the foundation for success. So those who already are, let's say, adhering to good practice in some of these criteria are in a much better place to sort of move quickly through the process of designing a product that actually is coherent and participatory, which of course leads it to be more let's say successful and ready to reach the market. So we're working with parks that are really up and down that spectrum, and the big X factor is time in terms of just getting them sort of up to speed and ready to act as a destination the way that would be expected from let's say an international standard point of view. And Mauro, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with what you just said. If I can add something, well, specifically for the projects in the Mediterranean and for the protected areas in the Mediterranean, very often, well, very few, as Jeremy said, have management plans, and very often the management plans are focused on the conservation aspect, and so we found it very useful in other specific cases to work on sustainable tourism management plans, and on those parallel kind of documents that then feed into the overall management of the PA. The GSTC criteria come in very, very handy, like they are super useful, especially because the protected area managers don't know what to ask from the private sector. They don't know basically who to work with, what are the requirements, and in this case specifically the industry criteria are very useful for them to have a some kind of reference, that otherwise they wouldn't have.
Okay, great, thank you. Let's go to the next question. Back to Lisa Scriven. This is for Meet. You mentioned that the establishment of communication platform, public and private, but also clusters. Can you share a bit about how that works? Practically, we struggle to get businesses, etc., to put aside time to engage in such platforms, and many prefer different methods of communications. Perhaps you found some magical solution that works for everyone.
Well, my first reaction to that is that there is no magical solution that works for everyone. And even within what we created, the local ecotourism cluster, I mean, it's a pretty broad idea. We've tried to give the protected areas the flexibility to make it work for them in the way that will be successful at local level. What we require, I mean, it's fundamentally is a formal agreement between a tour operator who is responsible for the ecotourism products in the park and the protected area itself. And so, of course, that formal agreement makes a big difference because there is already in place a let's say formal cooperation mechanism, and the tour operator is typically selected. I mean, these are public authorities, so the tour operator is selected through a transparent process, and has often made the decision to be a part of that cooperation. Then the tour operator is usually the one responsible for identifying which suppliers are the right ones for this kind of a cooperation within the protected area, let's say the protected area product, and it's not for everybody. So how in terms of how it's operationalized, we have good practices around that in terms of like consistency and how they should be handling, let's say, the operations and the communication among them. But most importantly, it's just to be consistent, to be participatory and open, and to have something really tangible that you're working on. And so what we found was having these products and then this very simple dashboard related to monitoring makes a huge difference, because they have from the beginning shared goals and objectives and action things that they're working toward that are directly related to an economic incentive. And so the motivation, and I think is more built in when you have that kind of environment.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question, let me answer it, by Juraj Swajda. How do you understand different certification tools which we have or will have, e.g. former Pan-Park Network or current European Charter for Sustainable Tourism in protected areas? Are we heading towards one complex and uniform system, or will we have in future more different certification system tailored to local conditions, etc.? Thanks. So let me answer from the GSTC perspective. The GSTC criteria is a baseline standard, the criteria for sustainability in travel and tourism. Over the past few years, we have recognized different standards that are equivalent in the wordings to the GSTC to the GSTC criteria. Some of the GSTC recognized standards are specifically for specific countries and specific type of tourism. For example, ecotourism Kenya has a GSTC recognized standard. So this is a very specific for the ecotourism industry in Kenya. Probably tourism in Las Vegas would not use that standard. So the same goes to other places. We are seeing that more and more standards and schemes are looking to be recognized by the GSTC as equivalent to the GSTC criteria, meaning that we will be speaking the same basic language of sustainability and travel and tourism. However, when we go to more specific areas or regions or type of tourism or relevancies, for example, protected areas or in the city, then it will differ. I will also send in the follow-up a link to a paper that was written by the European Commission a few months ago this year, recommending the engagement with the GSTC in order to bring European standards to be harmonized with the GSTC criteria, at least the basic part of it. So this is the answer to Raj's question, and I will now unmute Roxana Goldstein. Unmuting you so you can ask your question. Go ahead, Roxana.
Okay, thank you, Roy, and all of you. This is a great webinar. I would like to ask you about something that in my country, Argentina, the government is working in the development of an environment management guidelines for protected areas at this moment. And I offer to prepare a proposal for the inclusion or validation with the GSTC criteria of these guidelines, which I think that it may progress to be a sustainable tourism guidelines, not only for environment, you understand? So, and we have at the same time, we have a huge Ramsar site, which is being now developed as an ecotourism destination. So there is the tool in the process of being made, and the site to be the Ramsar site to be the destination to test this tool. So I ask you, how can you help me to make a proposal to include the criteria in the process of developing these guidelines and to test it in the Ramsar site? I think that both the Botswana experience and the Mediterranean experience are experiences that can help me to see how to work with these criteria in these processes that are being ongoing now in my country.
Okay, let me answer
I
that.
will be, yes, excuse me?
Yeah, please go on. I wanted to answer that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so first of all, I see you wrote in your question that you plan to take the GSTC training, the online training. Is that correct? Next month.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
this will give you a lot of knowledge and practical skills on how to understand the GSTC criteria and how to apply it. So I believe that you will have more tools after you've done the training. Also, a comment is that we actually have one GSTC recognized standard in Argentina, which is called Hoteles Más Verdes, greener hotels, which refers to greener hotels, as you might imagine. So this is a program of the Asociación de Hoteles de Turismo de Argentina. You can have a look at that, but I think that we can also continue this discussion privately with some more suggestions, because it seems to be very specific to your case. And all of us that have presented are glad to continue this discussion. We will share all of our emails, and please send us an email and we will reply to you. Let me go to the next question. Okay, question for Mauro and Jeremy. Regarding MEET project, do you provide training courses or seminars about sustainable tourism for destination managers?
Yes, actually, that's something that we are offering through the MEET network, specifically for protected areas, of course. So for any protected area who's interested, we have a capacity building. We have several trainings and capacity building sort of platforms that we can offer, building off the various tools that we've developed.
Thank you. We have another question from Kelly Bricker. Dr. Kelly Bricker, are there any incentives for tour operators by being certified on their ability to operate in the protected areas? Kelly, I'm going to unmute you just to understand to whom you refer this question to. Kelly, I've unmuted you.
Thank you. I know in Australia, they used to make the licensing process of a certified ecotourism operator much simpler to operate within a national park. And I just wanted to know if there's any mechanisms in place, either in Botswana or the Mediterranean, for that kind of example.
Okay. Can I answer that, Roy?
Yes, please go ahead.
Right. From Botswana side, all operators that operate within the protected areas, they operate in an area where it's leased to them. So they pay annual lease fees to the government. And this lease, it varies. It can be a lease of 15 years. It can be a lease of 10 years, depending on the area that you are in. But the government has to inspect the area that you are operating in, and you have to also comply to the laws and regulations of Botswana before you can even start to operate. And even when you are operating, there are annual inspection checks to see that you are also complying to the regulations, as well as the eco certification standard that we are using. A member of Botswana Tourism will join other members from the government, such as Department of Environmental Affairs, the land boards. The land boards are the ones that oversees the lands in such areas, and also join the others from the Department of Wildlife and National Parks. And then they make one inspection list to make sure that you align to all the regulations, as well as the eco certification standards. Yeah, if those teams find that there are other areas that you are not compliant, then the government will then give you the time frame for you to comply and make sure everything is in order. And the criteria that we are using, the standards that we are using, as we are going to also to align them to the GSTC. In Botswana currently, it's voluntary. It's not mandatory, and the industry participated in it, knowing the benefits of it. And you will find that most of them, they really comply to all the regulations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is a question for Destimed by Amaranta Zizioli. How does Destimed select the protected areas to work with?
That's a really good question. So as I mentioned, during the first few years of our work, we've been operating with European Union funding. And the structure, the scheme that we basically have set up to select pilot protected areas was through an open call in each country. So for example, IUCN is the, let's say the project partner in Spain, and we opened up a public call for interested protected areas. One thing we did change quite a lot the criteria from the MEET project into the Destimed project. Under the MEET project, it was fairly open, and we learned quite a lot from that process, and really tried to adjust the criteria for the Destimed project so that where possible, we were working with parks who were already implementing the European Charter, who again, where possible, had a management plan. We found that it wasn't even possible to hold to these criteria, because in certain countries there wasn't enough volume there to get the number of pilot sites that we needed. But these have been again projects where we had very kind of specific restrictions and requirements based on how we were stewarding EU funding. Going forward in MEET Network, we are in principle open to parks who are interested in working on this topic of ecotourism development. We now, the way we've set up our toolkit and our, let's say, interventions with parks, is that it can be anywhere from a park that is really starting out in the very beginning and does not have much in place, all the way to parks that are quite mature and really already working with the market and looking to, let's say, diversify their their product line. That said, MEET is a membership-based organization, and we are requiring that parks meet some very basic enabling conditions, that they have a participatory planning mechanism in place through the cluster, that they have a draft product that is adhering to basic principles of ecotourism product design, and that they make an annual commitment to monitoring. So we don't want to dilute the, let's say, the membership and the level of quality, and we want parks to have a commitment to what we're doing. But if parks are far away from that and want to work toward it, we're also very willing to sort of help them along that process as they apply. And then I should just add that we are, we also have now a catalog. We're launching our product catalog of MEET packages to the market in October at the Adventure Travel World Summit in Tuscany, and we are also interested in working with parks that are looking to do the same, that are looking to be part of a common brand, that have the potential for attracting an international market who is interested in real, like say, authentic local experiences that support and and benefit conservation. And that's a part of, let's say, the criteria of I think who will be successful within this initiative.
Okay, this will be the last question, and we will send tomorrow. We will send a follow-up email, and you will have the information of our emails, and you can write us if you would like to. This is a question by Elisa Spampinato. Thanks to everyone. Question for Mauro and Jeremy. I would like to understand better the process practically. How a protected area would become part of the local ecotourism cluster? Is that a regional or national cluster? Thank you.
Okay, I can start answering, and then maybe Jeremy can add. So the process is essentially within the estimate project in particular. We asked the protected areas to a commitment so the protected area generally leads on the process, so they have to make a commitment to create the local ecotourism cluster. So they have to get in touch with the local kind of tour operator and whoever is going to be involved in this local cluster, and create this sort of management unit for the project and for the overall monitoring process and the standard. It's not a regional process; it's a local process. So as it's mentioned in the name, is like a local unit that coordinates the whole thing. It's very important because it ensures the public-private partnership. It ensures the participative approach. It's the best way to involve sort of the local businesses and to include the local communities in the decision process, and also to make sure that you have a local tour operator, and therefore all the activities and all the criteria that require, for example, local employment and the value chain process that actually stays there is the only way to make sure that that happens. So it is not regional, but it's a local management unit. You have to think of it that way. Jeremy, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, I think you covered it well. Thanks, Mauro.
Okay, so with this we will conclude our webinar for today, and some follow-ups. As I said, tomorrow we will send you a follow-up email, and you're welcome to join future TAPAS webinars. For GSTC, we also host webinars, but this is for GSTC members only. If you would like to continue this conversation and learn more about these topics, you can join us at the Global Sustainable Tourism Conference in Maun, Botswana. We will actually have, on the last day, a post-conference tour that will go to Moremi Grain Reserve. So not only we will discuss it for 2 days intensely in the conference inside the rooms, the next day we will go and we'll see what we have talked about today. Thank you very much again to our speakers. Jeremy Sampson, Ecosystem Program Communications Officer at IUCN, Mauro Randone, Regional Project Manager at WWF Mediterranean, Thatayaone Mmapatsi, Senior Grading Assessor at Botswana Tourism Organization, and myself, Roy Ariel, General Manager at GSTC, and of course to everyone that joined, listened, asked questions, and for those that will watch later on this recording. Thank you very much, and
Thank you.
stay where you are.
Thank you, and
Thank
we
you.
will look forward to seeing everyone in Botswana in December.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Okay.
Bye.